A 3-day blizzard event dominated the eastern half of North America from February 12th through Valentine's Day on the 14th. Today, we cover the 13th, when a record amount of snow from this system hammered down on Hammer Town. Hi, I'm Chris May, writer, producer, and host of This Day in Weather History, now in its second year from the Weather Network in Canada. Today we are back to these monsters of the winter months, but this time records were falling as well. This day in weather history. Back on February 6th, 7th, and 8th, I covered a terrifying trilogy of blizzards. That's actually what I called that series. Anyway, the February 2007 North American blizzard was a massive winter storm that swept across and adversely affected, to say the least, most of the eastern half of North America. That went on for 3 days. It packed all the usual suspects: heavy snowfall across the Midwestern United States from Nebraska to Ohio, and then carrying on to the northeastern United States, and then across and into Canada through the provinces of Ontario, Quebec, and New Brunswick. Significant freezing rain and ice pellets were also an issue when they fell across the southern Ohio Valley and affected portions of the east coast of the U.S., including the cities of Boston, Baltimore, D.C., New York City, and Philadelphia. It was precedent-setting, as the National Weather Service of the U.S. said that this storm was one of the 3 largest snowstorms to hit the inland areas of the northeast United States since way back in 1940. Now, as a quick footnote, and as we all know by now after watching the Weather Network, during these months, the powerful deep lows that truck over the Rockies and drive snow to these areas I just mentioned, there needs to be a feed to supply that amount of moisture to collide with the drawn-in Arctic air to produce that amount of snow. That moisture normally comes from the Gulf of Mexico. So now, if we have enough of an impact in the north with heavy snow, then in the Gulf there is likely a very angry storm into itself. After all, you have this deep draw over the Gulf sucking up into the atmosphere a lot of warm, moist air that will fight angrily against the cold and dry of the season. This volatility creates a wildly unstable atmosphere, and as a result here, the southern portion of this storm produced severe thunderstorms with numerous tornadoes reported. Sadly, and remember that this is still just the year 2007, one tornado hit a subdivision of New Orleans that was still recovering from the effects of the devastation brought on from Hurricane Katrina when it hit the region in August of 2005, not that long ago. Welcome to year 2 of this podcast. Right now, you're listening to the full version of today's story on your favorite podcast provider, but there's also the daily podcast video short. They're shot right here in my podcast recording studio, so you get that perspective, but oftentimes they will include visuals from that day's event from when it happened in weather history. So after listening to the full story, go check out the podcast video short on television or online anytime at theweathernetwork.com/weather history. Now let's hit up the Canadian part of this storm story. This system brought with it heavy snow, high winds, and whiteouts for communities stretching from Windsor to Cornwall and Hamilton, which was expected to see the worst of it. In this one, the city of Toronto got off relatively easy. However, there was a major accident on Highway 403 involving a tractor-trailer that effectively shut down the highway for several hours, while dozens of flights were delayed or canceled at Pearson International Airport. And now, February 13th, 2007, Hamilton's snow record. In the midst of the blizzard ravaging the United States and the track it was taking along the shores of Lakes Erie and Ontario, for the city of Hamilton, this became the snowiest February day all time when 30.5 centimeters of snow was reported in the city. That also made it the 4th snowiest day all time for any day in any month for Hamilton. And now some perspective. For Hamilton, a normal snow total for the whole month of February is 35 centimeters. So in a way, you can also say with some degree of confidence that this was almost a month's worth of snow in a single day. That is a quote from the Weather Network's meteorologist, Michael Carter. In total, this storm system was responsible for 37 deaths that spanned 13 United States and 3 provinces, being New Brunswick, Ontario, and Quebec. NOAA would go on to effectively classify this storm as a Category 3 or major storm from this day in weather history. Tomorrow is Valentine's Day. Man, I hope y'all took care of that special someone, because if you are just finding out about this now on this podcast, you are in real trouble, my friend. The city of Toronto was in love with itself and its basketball team, and it wanted to woo the attention of the National Basketball Association. So they got all dolled up and really set a gorgeous scene. Everything was in place. They even planned a huge party, and everyone from the NBA was invited. All the cool kids were coming too. Nothing could go wrong. They thought of everything. This was supposed to be a match made in heaven. On this day in weather history, with me, your host, Chris May.